You must trust your gut. Some people call it a quiet whisper, that voice you hear directing you down the path of life. Others call it intuition or a hunch, and then they make a move. I call it trusting your gut, a feeling so deep and electric you can almost see it and touch it. Each time in life when faced with trusting my gut, things always ended up going that direction 100% of the time, no exceptions. In my youth, I had a terrible time discerning between trusting my gut and allowing the environment to dictate my decisions. My neighborhood was the local hub of crime, drugs, gambling, and prostitution. One of the places I would hang out was called the Union Avenue Arcade. Back in the 80s, it was the place where all of the neighborhood delinquents hung out. I had one foot on that side of the fence and my other foot on the right side of the fence. In the middle of it all was my mother with an extra firm hand. One night while hanging with my buddies in the arcade after school, I was approached by this young lady that I had my eye on for a while. We would flirt frequently with each other, but it never led to any substantial conversations. I never pursued beyond the flirt, partly because she was a middle school dropout that loved hanging in the streets all day. I would have had a hard time explaining to my mother what and where the common ground was that we shared. On this particular night, she approached me with her girlfriends and she said, "This is the one. I choose him to be my man." I said, "Yep, that's right. She's with me." She then explained that she and her friends would be working Broadway that evening. Working meant prostituting. She told me to meet her back at the arcade at 11 p.m. and she would give me all of her money. Of course, I agreed on the spot to save face, and then they went to work. Keep in mind, this was a school night, and I was a freshman in high school. Something in my gut told me that if I made the decision to go collect the cash at 11 p.m., it would lead me down a path of self-destruction. And I also knew that my mother would deliver a beatdown so profound that Jesus Christ wouldn't have been able to recognize me. Needless to say, I didn't make it. I did run into her the next day at the arcade, and we spoke briefly before a large RV pulled up in front of the arcade and she and her friends boarded. Before she ran out of the arcade, she turned to me and said she still wanted me to be her man and that we will talk after she finished with her RV business. I never saw her again after that brief encounter. I was told later by a credible source that she was murdered shortly thereafter. Trust your gut. As I matured, I began to rely on my gut as a life tool, a compass of sorts that would not only lead me away from potentially dangerous situations, but also lead me towards people or situations that could enrich my life. In 1997, I was working for Adidas America as the NFL marketing manager. My scope of employment was to sign players in the NFL to endorse Adidas football shoes. This meant speaking with NFL agents on a daily basis. At this time, Adidas was re-entering the NFL market after a 20-plus year absence, and the competition was Nike and Reebok. One evening while working late in the office, I received a phone call from an agent who wanted a shoe endorsement deal for his player. His guy was a lesser-known product from Ohio State University and was drafted by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I routinely said no to players like this because I was looking for higher-profile players. Hence, I thanked the agent for calling, but politely declined to sign the player. He persisted, and I let him deliver his full repitch of the player. And again, I politely declined. This was a normal dance with agents pitching low-profile players. Therefore, the rejection was just a part of the dance. But this time, something was different. My gut was telling me that this agent was actually trying to make a difference for this young man and his career. In fact, he went on to explain to me that this player came from a family of physicians, and he was going to become one after his career ended. That information intrigued me, and I began to listen with both ears. He went on to tell me that he was a recent University of Miami law graduate working as a new associate at a high-profile sports agency. He disclosed to me that this deal would help increase his status within the agency. We continued to talk for another hour or so about life. We talked about his growing family, and I shared details about my newness to fatherhood. We both were new graduates from law school and had a common interest in sports law. He was from Baltimore, and I had lived in D.C. while attending undergrad. I loved D.C. and spent some time in Baltimore, which I enjoyed very much. By the end of the conversation, I agreed to sign his player. I really felt like this particular young agent was going to be a major player in the agency game, and I wanted to help. And of course, there was a feeling of brotherhood with him. Over the next 2 years, he represented higher profile players, and I signed them all. We enjoyed an excellent working relationship. It was a pleasure to see a friend grow his business from scratch and reach new levels in the business. I was terminated from Adidas in 1999, and I experienced some very difficult times. But my guy was there for me and my family. There was always a phone call to check in on me, a package of shoes or clothing, and financial assistance. 25 years later, we still enjoy our brotherhood. Thank you, Mr. Troy Jones, for being my brother for life. Trust your gut.